If you want a masterclass in turning, personal skills into strategic national defense, then you should strap on your skis because today we are heading straight into the frozen crucible of the Winter War. We're talking 1939, 1940. This was just this incredible asymmetric collision between the industrialized, massive quantitative might of the Soviet Union and the agile, terrain-adapted light infantry of Finland.
It really was a true David versus Goliath scenario, fought in just deep snows
What?
and dense taiga forests. But one man, just a small Finnish farmer, he rose to become a phenomenon, a man who really challenged the very assumption that scale always wins. That man was Simo Häyhä.
Known to his Soviet adversaries simply as the White Death or Belaya Smrt. I mean, we're talking about numbers that almost defy logic. In less than 100 days, it was 98 days of active combat, to be precise. Heihe achieved the highest number of confirmed sniper kills in any major conflict, credited with somewhere north of 500 total hostile neutralizations.
Just think about that for a moment. I mean, this was individual effectiveness acting as a monumental force multiplier. So our mission in this deep dive is to understand exactly how his pre-war, his non-military background, how his civilian skills, honed by pure necessity, allowed him to exert a strategic influence that entire Soviet battalions just struggled to counter. It reveals some pretty profound truths about individual agency in extreme conditions.
Okay, let's unpack this perfect convergence of a man, his environment, and this really specific fieldcraft. Let's start with the groundwork, the geographic and cultural context that, created this soldier.
Right. Simo Häyhä was born in 1905 in Rajärvi, deep in the Viipuri province. The region is just. It's defined by dense forests, freezing lakes, and this rugged, unforgiving terrain. This wasn't just a childhood playground for him. It was a constant, challenging instructor.
And this kind of relentless environment, it forges sisu, that famously untranslatable Finnish concept, right? It's often defined as this incredible inner strength, grim determination, and resilience in the face of impossible odds. His upbringing was just one of relentless physical demand, simply to survive the winter and work the land.
Absolutely. And that foundational resilience, it also had a very painful personal foundation. He was from a stoic Lutheran farming family, but the defense of the nation was already stained by personal tragedy for them. His brother, Antti Häyhä, was killed during the 1918 Finnish Civil War. So for Simo, the threat of invasion, it wasn't some abstract policy. It was the defense of his family and home, which lent this intense personal stake to his later combat.
And before the war, he wasn't practicing marksmanship for, a target sport. He was a farmer and a dedicated hunter, pursuing moose and birds just to put meat on the table. So when you consider his later success, what kind of physiological conditioning does that background even suggest?
It suggests a level of tolerance and stillness that, well, military drills simply cannot replicate in basic training. I mean, think about moose hunting. It demands absolute silence, the ability to read wind direction, to mask your scent, and hours of waiting, completely motionless in freezing conditions for that one perfect shot. He was physiologically conditioned to endure -20, even -40-degree weather while remaining absolutely still.
That's the difference between training for an hour and, well, training for survival.
Yeah.
But he did have formal training too, didn't he? He joined the Rautjärvi Civil Guard, the Suojeluskunta, at age 17.
He did, and it was vital. He was a prolific competitor, won numerous trophies, which gave him this deep, intuitive understanding of ballistics and distance estimation. And crucially, the Civil Guard focused on what they call field shooting, so engaging targets at unknown ranges in irregular, non-static terrain. He learned to shoot efficiently from any position, including while moving on skis.
And he became intimately familiar with his primary weapon. The Sako M2830 rifle he used was effectively a Finnish, highly refined variation of the Russian Mosin-Nagant action, but built to precision standards, so it gave him a familiar, reliable, and powerful tool.
Exactly. It wasn't some new high-tech weapon. It was a refined version of a reliable platform that he knew down to its screws. And here's where his physical traits played directly into these asymmetric tactics. Häyhä stood only about 160 centimeters, so 5 feet 3 inches.
That small stature, I mean, you'd think it would be a disadvantage in a mass army, but it became a supreme tactical asset, didn't it?
It allowed him to use low cover, small snowdrifts, or the base of small pine trees that a larger soldier would never be able to fully hide behind. He just maximized his concealment, making him nearly invisible, where a man 6 inches taller would have presented a clear target profile.
Okay, now let's transition to the front. When the Winter War erupted, Häyhä was deployed to the Kala River front. This area was critical. It was the line that absolutely had to hold in just brutal conditions.
The tactical scene was stark. Temperatures routinely plunged to -40°C. His unit, the 6th Company, was led by Lieutenant Arni Juutalainen, the terror of Morocco, and they were aggressive, unconventional. Juutalainen was smart enough to recognize unique talent, so he granted Häyhä and his fellow marksmen exceptional operational freedom to employ these guerrilla-style infiltration tactics.
Right, and that operational freedom is what allowed him to use his specific and sometimes, well, bizarre fieldcraft. Let's delve into the technical points that made him not just a good sniper, but an invisible one.
The first and maybe the most essential technique was muzzle blast signature elimination. When a high-powered rifle fires, the expanding gases exiting the muzzle, they kick up any loose snow. It creates this distinct white dust cloud that instantly reveals the shooter's position, especially against a white forest background.
So his solution, which was born from just practical knowledge of the environment, was to pack the snow down into hard, solid mounds, sometimes even icing it down right in front of his firing position. That simple action just eliminated the signature. It ensured total stealth.
Then there's the second technique, which to me truly embodies the extreme physiological cost of sisu. It's thermal discipline, the snow and mouth technique. In temperatures below -20°C, a sniper's rhythmic, warm breath creates a highly visible plume of steam.
And for a Soviet countersniper looking for any sign of life, that plume is the ultimate giveaway. So to stop it, he kept a handful of freezing snow, or ice, inside his mouth while waiting in ambush.
The melting snow would cool the air inside his oral cavity and condense the moisture before he exhaled, reducing the vapor plume to, an unnoticeable wisp. And we have to emphasize the staggering physical tolerance that's required. I mean, holding something freezing in your mouth for hours on end, risking severe dental damage and frostbite, purely for concealment. That wasn't training. It was pure self-imposed discipline for survival.
But his most famous choice, and maybe the most analyzed, was his optical philosophy. Häyhä famously rejected the use of telescopic sights, scopes, in favor of the standard open iron sights on his rifle, which seems like a massive disadvantage for a marksman operating at 300, 400 meters. Was this just stubbornness or a highly calculated tactical choice for the Winter War?
Oh, it was entirely calculated. It provided 4 critical tactical advantages in that specific environment that scopes just couldn't offer. First, stealth. Any glass lens is a potential reflector of sunlight, that's glint, and it instantly gives away an otherwise perfectly camouflaged position. Iron sights don't glint.
Second would be reliability, right? At -40, scopes often fog up, frost over, or their internal mechanisms just seize. Iron sights are just steel. They're totally unaffected by the extreme temperature.
A third point is profile. Using a scope forces a shooter to raise their head higher off the stock to align their eye with the eyepiece, creating a larger silhouette. Iron sights allowed Häyhä to keep his head as low as possible, reducing his target profile even further.
And finally, versatility. I mean, in the dense, chaotic forest environment of Kola, iron sights offered a wider, unmagnified field of view. This allowed for incredibly fast target acquisition and tracking, which is just essential when you're engaging moving columns or multiple targets, rather than the narrow tunnel vision of a scope.
That combination of technical knowledge and adaptability is why he was so lethal. And while he is famous for his rifle, we have to remember, he was a dual threat. For close-quarters defense, particularly when repelling those human-wave Soviet attacks, he relied on the robust Suomi KP-31 submachine gun.
The Suomi, yeah. With its heavy 71-round drum magazine, that weapon was designed for overwhelming suppressive fire in tight spaces. It's kind of the perfect counterpoint to his slow, deliberate sniper work.
Exactly. The record shows that approximately 200 of his attributed kills were achieved with the SMG. So this just confirms his ability to seamlessly transition from deliberate, precision, long-range engagement to, well, high-volume, frantic close defense. He wasn't just a sniper. He was a highly adaptable infantryman.
Let's talk about the psychological impact of this force multiplier. Because Häyhä wasn't just firing at random. His priority targets were Soviet officers and counter-snipers.
And that targeting strategy just paralyzed the enemy. By eliminating leadership, he exploited the rigidly hierarchical nature of Soviet command, which often failed to adapt or respond without clear direction. But more profoundly, the knowledge that the White Death was hidden somewhere in that tree line. It created this profound, paralyzing fear and hesitation among the Red Army troops.
And that fear translated into strategic action. Soviet commanders were forced to divert immense resources. We're talking about ordering massive artillery barrages and deploying entire counter-sniper teams, all just to eliminate one man. They were using area denial weapons against an invisible individual.
In that desperation, it became physical. When the Soviets realized conventional methods weren't working, they started resorting to specialized ammunition, likely explosive or incendiary rounds, as a desperation tactic designed to create fragmentation and shock damage, hoping to eliminate the hidden shooter through sheer force rather than precision.
His lethality, driven by both skill and terror, it accumulated terrifyingly fast. I mean, within the first 3 weeks of the war, he had already recorded 138 sniper kills. That's an average of roughly 6 kills per day. His total tally just confirms his status as maybe the single greatest individual force multiplier in modern military history.
But the intense pace and the cost of this highly personal combat, it inevitably caught up with him.
Described the event of March 6, 1940. It was during a major Soviet offensive at Ulizma.
Häyhä was once again fighting at the sharpest point of the battle. It was during that chaos that a Soviet soldier managed to spot and fire an explosive bullet.
The wound was just catastrophic. The round struck his lower left jaw, shattered it, tore away his left cheek and much of his upper jaw structure. He was so severely wounded and the fighting so chaotic that he was initially presumed dead. They actually gathered him onto a pile of fallen soldiers.
He fell into a deep coma. And then, in this dramatic, almost symbolic twist, Simo Häyhä regained consciousness on March 13, 1940, the exact day the Moscow Peace Treaty was signed, ending the Winter War. The very moment the Finnish resistance he had defined was officially over, the man awoke.
His personal battle for recovery, though, was far more grueling than the 98 days of war. You mentioned the extent of his injuries. What did that recovery even look like?
It demanded incredible long-term resilience, a totally different kind of sisu. He required 26 separate surgical operations over the following months and years to reconstruct his jaw. They used extensive bone grafts harvested from his hip, and he suffered permanent facial disfigurement and lived with near-constant pain for years afterward.
That is just a profound cost of war. And since the peace treaty ceded his home region, she became a refugee in his own country. He settled in Rukolade, where he quietly returned to his civilian roots as a farmer and a dog breeder.
And despite the scars and the pain, he retained his deep connection to the land and his marksmanship. He became a renowned moose hunter, often hunting with Finnish President Urho Kekkonen in the 1970s. He even credited his dog, Kill, equally for their success, noting Kill barked 73 moose over their tenure. That quiet dignity retreating into the wilderness, that was his solace.
What's really remarkable is his character, which remained utterly stoic despite the legendary status he achieved. His 1940 memoir, Sutamistojo War Memories, and his later responses about his service, they all reveal this total professional detachment, not bloodlust.
Right, and if we look for the true measure of the man, it's in his consistency. When he was asked later in life about remorse or the horror of his actions, his answer never wavered. He just said, "I did what I was told to do as well as I could. There would be no Finland unless everyone else had done the same."
It's such an understated statement of duty that really defines the archetype of Sisu. So what does this all mean for us? Häyhä's legacy, it really transcends his statistical anomaly. He wasn't a super soldier engineered by advanced weaponry. He was a farmer defending his land, using skills honed by necessity to defeat industrial scale.
His story is the definitive example of asymmetric tactics applied at the infantry level. In an environment of extreme difficulty, the qualitative superiority of the highly adapted individual, his mastery of concealment, his physiological conditioning, his willingness to reject technology like scopes for reliability, it can completely disrupt the quantitative superiority of a massed, rigid army.
We've examined how Häyhä weaponized the environment, turning hunting skills into battlefield doctrine. From the iron sights and packed snow to the sheer physical grit required for the snow and mouth technique. It was ingenuity and endurance that won the day.
Which raises an important question, I think. Simo Häyhä carried the physical and psychological toll of that asymmetric resistance. The 26 surgeries, the constant pain, the refugee status, the unwanted fame for the rest of his very long life. He died in 2002 at 96.
Yeah.
So given the extreme demands placed on individuals like him to secure independence, what is the full accounting beyond the famous kill count of the price of Sisu for those who truly embody it?
That's something for you to mull over as you explore the history of the Winter War and the concept of individual defiance further. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us.